Good evening and welcome back. We are with the outgoing Auditor General, Edward Ouko, here on Checkpoint tonight. Before we went to break, we were talking about just how the audit reports that we see and the queries that are raised translate to action being taken against those that are embezzling public funds. But let's, Mr. Ouko, talk about the Office of the Auditor General, because there's Parliament's role, and we've seen the kind of sittings and summons they issue and the public officers appearing before them. But the Public Audit Act 2015, if we can put that up on the screen, Article 65, that talks about just some of the roles of your office. I want us to read that. It is, if it is established by the Auditor General that there has been any deficiency in respect of any money or asset subject to its audit, the Auditor General may recommend to Parliament or county assemblies that the person in default or responsible should be charged with the amount of deficiency or loss. Would you say this is something that has happened?
I think this is a well-intentioned article, but its practicality and implementation has not been more or less possible or agreed upon. And I think this is where we need to go. We need to activate that particular article of the Public Audit Act. And between us and the Parliament, we need to know how to activate it, because, you know, surcharging, once it is agreed, it has to be effective and it has to be implemented. Yeah. So all this has to be agreed. For instance, if I now surcharge, say, an accounting officer, who has got the means to implement it? Is it me to go and implement it, or is it Parliament? Who is to enforce it? So all this we must agree. So the intention of the Public Audit Act is pretty good. But increasingly now, with my other colleagues and the other Supreme Audit institutions, this particular article is now thought to needs to be actually be activated by the oversight organs. That is by Parliament. Yeah. Parliament.
So what? Another?
No. I think it's just that we just have. It won't be. I don't think it would be another legislation. But we need to have an organ which then enforces that surcharge.
Because, for instance, part of what again is in this Public Audit Act is that officers from the Auditor General's office can report issues to the EACC, yes, to the police. Would that be the enforcing then mechanism you seek?
No, with the EACC and also DPP and DCI. That's a different scenario, because that one is like we should be working together. We should be giving them issues which it is in their purview or their best place to investigate. But for this one, it's really a report which I should say that in this particular case, we recommend the surcharging of Mr. or Miss X. Right now, once I've done that, the actions, who is to implement it?
But why not do it and let then Parliament, when it's seized of the matter, worry about that going forward?
It is true, we'll need to, this is the frontiers we need to push further, even as we now go the heightened fight against corruption. I think it's an article which we now need to be bold, and I believe that we, the auditors, should be very bold and start mentioning names and recommending surcharge. Yeah,
because it's also interesting to note that the same act gives the Auditor General powers to, when there's reason to believe money has been diverted to personal accounts, with of course a court order, get into personal accounts of individuals and see what's happening there. So that there is a lot of power in your office.
True. Yeah. True, there is a lot of power in the office. And I think it is something which we need to actually mainstream better. And it's an area which I think we can do more.
You're right.
Yeah, but doing more, it means the audit also needs to be a bit more in-depth. That means we need to take slightly longer also to do some of the audits to look at these things. And that, of course, also is in the backdrop of the volume of work which we have. But I believe that that's where we should be going. Right. I believe that's where if my successor should look into. We've been busy trying to just let the office take root first, and the office has now taken root. We are now in a position to start tackling those hard questions of surcharge, hard questions of making sure that the office also is responsive and is responding to the fight against corruption.
And perhaps still on the same, to the question of what more, in your view now, whether it is in law or not, can be done to ensure that the repetitive issues that keep coming up. I mentioned that before we went on break. So for instance, we saw you gave a clean bill of health to Makueni County, but some of these counties are known for every other, audit report, and we see when the governors are summoned, the same issues keep recurring. What is the recourse in that particular point? How is public interest protected? How is Wanjiko's money protected? Because then, if there's all of this process coming, money is going out, and the same issues keep recurring, what in your view needs to happen?
I think we are also now trying to do a report, and we are going to do a report which gives reports on the 47 counties and how they, which ones were in the green, which one the red, which one, do you understand? And so that we can see the perennial issues. And these are the perennial issues which we believe that the Senate says should be seized upon, should be seized on. So we are trying to make sure that our act, what we do, is eventually going to lead to some legislation. For instance, let me tell you one area which we feel is perhaps maybe need for concern. A lot of counties are creating a lot of funds, funds for for youth in duplication, funds for, the local issues, like in other places, you have fund for OCOA, what do you call it, the drunkards and what have you.
Yes.
Yes, so these funds are increasing, and it's a problem which I think the Senate should be seized upon. We should know what exactly, how and when, and what criteria should be applied for counties to create a fund.
Right.
Yes.
To your performance, and as far as some of the projects we see implemented, I'm sure, being in Kenya, you're aware of just some of the controversial issues arising from a project, flagship project of this government, like the SGR. And one of the questions that had come from team was, has the Auditor General conducted an audit on the standard gauge railway on whether it was value for money?
The standard gauge railway has got two components. There is the investment and the building of the railway.
Yes.
Then there is the running of the railway.
Correct.
Do you understand the two components? The running of the railway, there's no problem, because that one is audited as Kenya revenue, which comes in. And, it's just been a year, which, you've got 1 year. So we are actually auditing that, auditing the revenue element of the standard gauge railway. But then you have the bigger issue about the investment in the whole railway. That is one which, you have the investment has just taken place, right? It just was delivered a year or so ago. So the audit of it is really still on. And in fact, we have a special audit which has been requested by Parliament, by National Assembly, to audit the issue of the compensation along the line. Yeah. Which report is actually quite advanced, and which we are going to issue very soon. Yeah.
Because there are those who felt it wasn't value for money. It would have been done at a cheaper, more cost effective, if you like, and because it's part of the Public Audit Act. If we can put up the Article 36 of where the Auditor General shall conduct performance audit to examine the economic efficiency and effectiveness of which public fund has expanded pursuant to Article 229 of the Constitution. So at what point do we expect to see?
I think this is something, once, in fact, in auditing the compensation, you're auditing the cost of the investment, part of the cost. In fact, part of the cost which you're talking about is mainly it's been maybe because of the compensation
Right.
issues. Then there is the part of the cost of the equipment, right? Those will be audited in time. But in the immediate is the issue of the money which we had to pay for compensation, which was money at most risk. Do you get me?
Right.
Yeah, and most likely to be abused. So that can actually is in effect also auditing the cost of SGR.
Okay.
Yeah, but there will be of course the equipment which have been imported or which have come from China will be audited.
But outside the financial audit, which is largely what we
Yeah.
do, some of the auditors and accountants are of the view that perhaps Kenya needs to shift to what I was talking about, performance-based auditing, where it's this value for money, that this is a project, all of this has gone in, but does it make sense? Is it what efficient Kenyans wanted? And on that note, before you respond, for our viewers on KTN Home, that's where we wrap up. Thank you for joining us tonight. So is it for you value for money?
We actually, the performance auditing is now increasing in the office. We actually have a whole department dealing with performance audit. They don't do what you call the accounting audit. They do performance audit, which responds to exactly those issues, the issues of efficiency, economy, and effectiveness. So there's a number of reports which we've done in various areas and which we have presented to the parliament. Our problem is that this Parliament has not really discussed these very useful reports because we've had reports on Kenyatta Hospital, we've had reports on various areas, we've had reports, on maternal health, we've had reports on all this. So these do not go to the traditional committee, which is the Public Accounts Committee. We try to take them to their relevant committees, like if it is maternal health, it will go to the Committee on Health. Do you understand? But
Yes.
we have these reports, and we even will give the executive. So these reports are there. Now it is a question of the Parliament to discuss this report, because I think they are very useful reports, because they are the reports which lead to policy changes.
Yes.
Which leads to, it's not saying how many, vouchers missing. No, these reports are telling things which has to be. We did one on the mental health. In fact, some of those reports, when compared internationally or regionally with other offices, we've won awards because of those reports. So
it's unfortunate,
we are concerned that the other committees leave the pack, leave the pick. The other committee are also responsible to ensure that they query some of these reports. They call the experts to talk and to give evidence on some of the things we say in this efficiency and effectiveness reports.
It's hard to hear you say that, because at the end of the day, you'd hope that is the kind of follow-through and follow-up that would bear results. So do you then think perhaps there should be more powers to the Auditor General's office, to the extent of you following up on the things that you recommend, the things that you see are going wrong and need to change, and nobody's acting on those things? Is there something more that can be done from your end?
I think from the auditor side, I think we need to look at this issue of surcharge.
Okay.
I think we need now to be clear and be bold and recommend. That one, I think, is a challenge, and I think it is us now to do that.
Okay.
But for the other reports, which you talk of efficiency, economy, and effectiveness, those are reports which are meant to bring improvements, which are meant to change, which are meant to bring policy issues, which are meant to be discussed so that the country as a whole takes. And this is really in the square shoulders of the parliamentary committees which are charged in those areas. I don't know why they don't see it fit to actually call our experts when they're trying to discuss those reports, because I do it. It is not to condemn anybody. It is a question to say, can we do things better? Or is there needs to be changes? Is there needs to be things to be to be thought out again about certain areas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is really the representatives of the people who should do that.
And part of your mandate also is to audit the public debt. And many Kenyans are worried by how astronomically high it's shot up since this administration came to power. So I wonder what for you are those, if at all, concerns that are around public debt and auditing the same. Because, for instance, with Eurobond 1, by the way, before we continue with that question, did you ever find where the money went? Eurobond 1.
The Eurobond 1 actually had already given a report.
Yes.
It did come in.
Eurobond came in, but where did it go?
But what people, the Kenyans, were impatient about, they thought that as money comes in, then I can opine on Eurobond. I cannot opine on Eurobond just instantaneously. It has to be something which you have to wait the Eurobond to filter into the system to be able to see where it has gone, to be able to allow, if at all there were projects which were to be undertaken, were actually undertaken.
And at the time you said you couldn't trace them.
No, it required the time. In fact, that's why it took a lot of time. People were saying, why is the auditor quiet? There is no way an auditor can opine on Eurobond without knowing, waiting for a time for it to be applied to see whether it is being applied properly.
Right.
And that's where we said, yes, Eurobond, said came in. The problem is that some of the expenditure were also spent outside the normal system of IFMIS. It's not that dismissed, but it was not directly traceable to a project. Yeah, so that's what we're saying.
So it's still the case that we don't know.
So what it is as they say, it's like money which came in and became fungible. And therefore it is very difficult for an auditor to come and say the Eurobond was used on this project and on this project.
And for an ordinary Kenyan who may not understand the terminology, that would mean if it came and you cannot trace it to a project, potentially lost, or it just went into budgetary, what we call budgetary support?
Well, could well be that.
That's what the Treasury former, CS, I think at one point mentioned.
Yeah, but you can't, it's very difficult to audit it, to see what it touches.
But isn't that the biggest concern, what you raised, that government and public institutions, county governments are working outside IFMIS? Because then how is auditing going to work?
I think we should limit any amount of expenditure out of IFMIS, but IFMIS also has got its own problems.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Right.
I think IFMIS itself has got its own. My personal view is may not be agreeable to others, but having made Kenya to be in two levels of government, the national government and county government, and again 47 county, I feel that we still could have got an integrated system, but in a manner that respects the two levels of government.
The two levels of government. So for IFMIS, though, when you conducted an audit, and there were several loopholes that were raised at the time, part of which made it very easy for unscrupulous individuals to loot. Have things changed?
I don't think things have changed, but we are now doing a follow-up report to actually see whether things are changing. So this report is actually currently on. We are working on that. And so we are hoping that this report is actually going to reconfirm some of the concerns which we have, but I don't think things have changed much. You are leaving office on the 26th of this month, and I have not seen, perhaps it has happened somewhere, advertising for your successor, because it's a crucial office, critical, one that you have security of tenure for those 8 years. So do you know, are you aware that perhaps they're already looking for your replacement? I'm not aware. I'm not aware at all.
Right.
Yeah, at all. I'm not aware at all.
But that should be worrying. Talk to us about the process and the import first, I suppose, of what it would mean to not have a substantial Auditor General once you leave on the 26th.
Well, I think the audit, if there's no Auditor General when I leave 26, what it means there will have to be a void.
A void.
Yeah, because in my understanding of the Constitution is that there has to be an Auditor General. There cannot be acting Auditor General.
Even the deputy cannot.
They cannot be acting Auditor General because they cannot have a force of the Constitution. There has to be an Auditor General. So if 26 come and we don't have an Auditor General, it actually means that there's going to be a void in that office.
So the work being done then by the officers who, of course, are continuing with their work, what is the validity or the standing in law of those reports without an Auditor General?
Well, they'll be simply who will sign the reports. Nobody. There will be no Auditor General to sign the reports.
So there'll be no auditing happening.
No, auditing could
in
happen.
terms of
the staff can work,
yeah.
But the final product to go to Parliament has to be signed by an Auditor General.
Okay.
So those reports perhaps will, if there's none, they'll have to wait until substantive Auditor General comes in and will sign all of them to Parliament then.
Does this worry you, this delay?
Well,
or is it not a delay to you?
I don't think it's my responsibility.
Yeah, but just looking at it and knowing the responsibility.
As a professional,
yeah.
I'm concerned because I would have liked to hand over to my successor. I would have liked to hand over to my successor. Otherwise, it's. I'm a bit unhappy about that. That I'm not handing to a successor.
Right.
Yeah, but I think the more important thing is the successor.
Well, what is it you'd tell them if you manage to meet them? Because, and tie that in for me with the dangers of not handing over to a successor, leaving that office vacant for whatever period of time it will take. What are the dangers, if any?
The dangers, first of all, is that there's likelihood that the reports will be delayed. There's likelihood that the gains we've made in terms of reporting in a timely manner it will delay, but it means that a number of special audit reports cannot be acted upon, cannot have that force of law. It will mean that some of the good work we are doing with the DCI, ESCC, and the PP cannot have a standing in court.
Wow.
So basically, it will be a paralysis.
A paralysis at the
Yes.
Auditor General.
Yes.
There are those who would argue, is that by design? Would it be? Would you see that there are people who would rather this office that has given them sleepless nights and keeps popping all of these controversial reports, perhaps not a substantive head it works for? Many people are there.
I think this is our speculation, just like you can speculate, I can also speculate. But I think, we always think that everybody is of good faith and good intention.
Yeah.
But I think certain things must be done properly.
Like making sure there's a head recruited to replace you. There was a tweet here by Antonio Sigedi, who was talking about during his tenure, he faced many troubles and conflicts trying to safeguard the independence of his office, even when the president castigated him publicly. How has it affected the work at the Auditor General in as far as ensuring they're independent?
I don't think that incident with the president was anything,
interfering with
my independence. I think the president also just made a comment like, from his point of view. But to me, I don't think it really affected the independence at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the independence is really manifested in the person. Because the independent is the person who has to be of independent mind, the resources which are given independently, and to allow the office to work as independently as possible.
Right.
Those are the things which are important, not remarks, which can be made off cuff or otherwise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you say, because this is one of the issues that arises, that even as we're talking about this anti-corruption campaign, and for instance with offices such as ODPP, DCI, that there are a few officers who are compromised and who work to then compromise the entire system in as far as the investigations and the prosecutions. The Auditor Generals, is that a concern? Is that something you've noticed? Is there something that can be done to safeguard this work, to avoid these rotten potatoes from ruining the entire bag?
I can't comment on the institution. Those are the institutions. But I think what really is important is how we work in a seamless manner.
But do you have those kind of issues in OAG? Where you have officers corruption of officers working in your office?
No,
that's what I mean.
We've had allegations. That's very true, allegation. I mean, we have about 1,500 staff, and they're all over the country. So that allegations are there.
Right.
But what we do is what is important. Whenever we receive such an allegations, we do take act. But I think it's to create a system whereby it's the people who are trying to be corrupt will be caught. And from our side, the corruption which they blame on my staff is that they suppress audit issues. I mean, that's the major thing. And that's what we have now worked on. We now have very solid audit management system,
Right.
whereby people have to work online, and whereby people have to tell us what they've been doing in the day. They have to record their time. They have to record where they're working. So what that means is that when a person enters in the morning through their laptop, through our servers, we know where they are, we know where they are working. So what they need to do is they need to tell us at the end of the 8-hour day what they were working on.
Right.
Now that means, we'll know that the staff was somewhere, was supposed to be working, and therefore we expect an audit finding or a finding to say there is no issue. Do you understand?
Right.
Yeah, so once this has been done,
Yes.
nobody else can change it. It would take the next level to change it.
Okay.
But even if the next level changes it, finally the directors and myself can recall all those suppressed issues and decide. So that is handling the issue of this, the integrity of the auditors.
The integrity of the auditors.
Yes.
Okay. I suppose as we bring this to an end, for a Kenyan watching at home, wherever they are, and wondering how can the office, in terms of efficacy, be improved so that it's not just reports coming out, but reports and audit queries and concerns are equals to, there's accountability. For those who are culpable, they're brought to book. How is that flow, in your view, as we finalize?
One thing which we are trying to mainframe is what we call citizens accountability audits.
Okay.
Now, this is where we feel that beyond, to answer some of the issues, what the office can do is in terms of accountability, is whereas we rely very much on parliamentary oversight, we need now to think of mainstreaming or involving the ordinary person where the delivery should be made, involved in the audit process. So the World Bank has been funding us to look at a system, how best we can mainstream the civil societies in the audit process.
Okay.
Now, the intention of this system is to be able in the future for the citizen to give us information, and we also to give the citizen information, which they can use to ask for accountability. So if it is our report, they will be able now to call on to the governor or to me and ask me about why are the reports not being acted upon. And this is where to go, because we need to capacitate the citizens to demand accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's in line, as you said, with the civil.
It's a civil accountability audit. And this, we've thought about this because we've benchmarked with India, what's happening in India, social accountability, and the Philippines and other countries. So we've taken what we thought is best for Kenya.
Okay. Well, thank you. What next for you, though, now that you're leaving? What are you going to be up to?
Oh, well, I think, during the 8 years, been 8 years of much on the day-to-day work of the office. I have really taken time to organize personal affairs. So I think I'll spend some time to handle my personal affairs, put things in order, because there are certain things which I should have done, but I could not do because of I'm completely occupied, with the office.
Yeah. But are you done with public life? Or you could still make a comeback?
No. I'll still be active professionally.
Okay.
Yes, I'll still be active professionally. I sit in a number of other international issues, boards, which I probably will still continue with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for being with us here on Checkpoint. We wish you the very best going forward.
Thank you.
And of course, we'll wait to see, hopefully, that they don't allow for that vacuum in terms of your replacement, the Office of the Auditor General, and having a substantive head